Most people have been buying nuts for years without realizing that some of these trees can live in pots. This is a hidden failure of the home gardening knowledge system that costs you money every month. Pistachios, almonds, and macadamias grow on trees that can be controlled on the terrace. One of these trees sounds completely impossible until you see the evidence. Another nearly disappeared from American history before making a surprising comeback. The third requires male and female partners for pollination, which adds biological intrigue. The final tree solves the classic walnut problem that home gardeners hate. Some of the statements in this material sound wrong until the evidence comes out. From unlikely to brilliant, 7 trees no one talks about. After this, you will never look at the walnut department of the store with the same eyes. You're paying for nuts that you could be growing right now in a pot on your deck. The crazy thing is that the trees that produce almonds, pistachios, macadamia nuts, some of the most expensive nuts on the planet, remain small enough to fit in a container and bear fruit year after year. Tree nuts are among the most expensive crops in the produce aisle because they combine long growth cycles, specialized harvesting, and post-harvest handling. The consumer pays for years of biology, not just for the package. It's a hidden asymmetry that most people never notice. A quick look at the premium aisles of pistachios, macadamias, and pecans in any supermarket will reveal prices that make you think about home production. Meanwhile, setting up a container garden only requires an initial outlay and then nothing. Absolutely nothing other than basic care and patience. The final tree on this list addresses the 2 biggest reasons why people avoid walnuts at home: tree size and chemical warfare against neighboring plants. This creates a specific curiosity gap instead of a general promise to blow the mind. Number 7 is pecan. Before you think about closing this video, yes, pecans in a container. Listen up, because this is where most people's minds explode. The standard pecan tree is huge. We're talking 80, even 100 feet tall in the wild. However, most gardeners are not aware that there are dwarf and semi-dwarf varieties of pecans, such as Pawnee, Cheyenne, and Elliott. These varieties can be grown aggressively in containers and maintained at a fraction of their natural size with proper root pruning and pot limiting. Confining the container intentionally slows down vegetative growth and redirects the plant's energy to reproductive production. Pecans are cold-resistant and heat-loving. They thrive in USDA zones 6 through 9, with some varieties making it into zone 5 with protection. You need a deep container, and that's critical, not just a wide one. Pecans develop a deep taproot, so choose a pot that is at least 24 inches deep and approximately 25 to 30 gallons in volume. Use a fast-draining loam mixture with some compost added, and never allow the soil to dry out completely while actively growing. Pecans are not self-fertile. They are wind-pollinated and are divided into 2 types. The first type, which releases pollen before the female flowers become receptive, and the second type, which does the opposite. You need one of each type for proper pollination and actual harvest. This phenomenon is called protandry and protogeny in scientific terms, but in simple language means that the trees of the first type shed pollen before the female flowers are ready. Type 2 trees do the opposite, and poor timing can reduce pollination quality. If you are growing pecans in containers, plan on 2 pots, 2 different varieties. Pawnee is of the second type. Combine it with a Cheyenne of the first type, and the system works. University of Georgia materials explain that pecan pollination depends on the overlap of type 1 and type 2 flowering. In terms of timing, in a container with a grafted dwarf variety, you can realistically expect the first nuts in 4 to 6 years. In full sun, a non-negotiable minimum of 8 hours, well-managed container pecans can produce an amazing harvest. The inside of fresh pecan shells contains natural tannins, which act as a mild antifungal agent when used as mulch around other container plants. Don't throw away these shells. Chop them up and spread them on the surface of the soil of other pots. Number 6 is Chinese chestnut. This may be the most underrated walnut tree on this list, and the reason lies in one of the greatest environmental tragedies in American history. Chestnut blight was first discovered in 1944 at the Bronx Zoo. By the mid-20th century, more than 4 billion American chestnut trees had died from the disease. Entire forests have become cemeteries of dead tree trunks, and ecosystems dependent on chestnut groves have collapsed. The American chestnut has practically disappeared as a forest-forming species. Chinese chestnut is naturally resistant to blight because Asian chestnut species have co-evolved with the pathogen over thousands of years. This resilience is passed on to the offspring, giving you a tree with built-in longevity from the start. USDA Zones 4 through 9. This is an incredible range of cold hardiness for a nut producer, one of the most cold-tolerant nut trees on the list. Chinese chestnuts can withstand very cold winter conditions in complete dormancy and tolerate summer heat just as well. The container size is 15 to 20 gallons to start with, although 25 gallons is ideal for a mature tree. The soil should be well drained and slightly acidic, with a pH between 5.5 and 6.5 being the sweet spot according to Missouri Extension guidelines. Chinese chestnuts are technically not completely self-fertile. You need 2 different trees for good pollination and a solid harvest, although they will sometimes produce multiple nuts with 1 tree. Just not reliable or abundant, so grow 2 in separate containers. Expect your first real harvest in 3 to 5 years from a grafted tree. The nuts themselves are incredibly versatile. They can be fried, ground into flour, boiled, or added to dishes. It is a legitimate source of carbohydrate-rich food that has been completely ignored by Western gardeners. In Asia and parts of Europe, chestnut flour has been a staple food for centuries. Here's a number you need to hear. Chestnuts are the only truly lean nut, with about 1 gram of fat per ounce, compared to almonds at 14 grams. For those watching their diet, chestnuts are in a completely different nutritional league. USDA data confirms that chestnuts are unusually low in fat compared to common culinary nuts. This makes them a unique source of calories among tree nuts. Chestnut burrs, those prickly hulls, are absolutely loaded with tannins and can be boiled in water to create a natural, mild wood dye. Old masters have been using this for centuries, and in the garden, dried millstones make an excellent physical barrier mulch to repel slugs around container plants. Number 5 is almonds. Almonds are genetically a stone fruit. Seriously, they are more closely related to peaches and cherries than to walnuts or pecans. This one fact changes everything about how you care for it, because when you realize this, you start treating it more like a peach tree. USDA Zones 7 through 9 are standard, but certain varieties push the boundaries significantly. All in. 1 in Garden Prints are 2 self-fertile dwarf almond varieties, and the word self-fertile is huge here. Almost every other almond variety requires a separate pollinator tree. The Garden Prince especially remains naturally compact, reaching 6 to 8 feet without aggressive pruning, making it practically made for container culture. Container size is 15 to 20 gallons. Full sun is a must. Almonds will not fruit in the shade. Drainage is absolutely critical as almonds are extremely susceptible to root rot. Your planting mixture should be fast draining, almost to the point of being sandy, with good organic matter. Water deeply but infrequently once established. Here's a timing warning that takes people by surprise. Almonds bloom incredibly early in the season, late winter or very early spring, sometimes February in warm zones. This early bloom is beautiful but dangerous because a late frost will kill the flowers and the entire year's harvest. If you are in a border area, growing in a container actually works to your advantage because you can move the tree to a sheltered location, even indoors for a few nights when frost threatens. This mobility is a serious competitive advantage that you simply don't have with trees in the ground. The time to the first nuts is 3 to 5 years from the grafted tree. When they start to bear fruit, the harvest is truly satisfying. You collect green, encased fruits that look almost like peaches, until they crack and reveal the shell inside. UC and Utah state materials confirm that almonds require full sun, very well-drained soil, and are vulnerable to spring frost due to their early flowering. This allows the botanical feature to be linked directly to the real-life consequences of care. Almond husks, the green outer shell that most people compost or throw away, are phenomenal compost boosters. They are rich in nitrogen and sugars and heat up the compost pile incredibly quickly. More interestingly, almond shell powder has been studied as a slow-release soil additive to improve water retention in sandy soils. Do not crush the shells or throw them away. Mix them directly into the planting soil when replanting other containers. Number 4 is pistachio. If you've ever seen the price tag on pistachios at the store and wondered how a nut could cost so much, growing your own will be extremely satisfying. But let's be honest with each other, because pistachios are not easy. They are rewarding, exciting, and absolutely container-grown, but require specific conditions that you must respect. USDA Zones 7 through 11, pistachios need two things that seem contradictory: long, hot, dry summers and true winter cold. We're talking about 850 hours below 45 degrees Fahrenheit in the winter to properly reset rest according to the UCANR manual. Without this cold, the tree will not produce flowers correctly the following season. This is why pistachios grow so well in California's Central Valley, Iran, and Turkey. Pistachios are dioecious, meaning that individual trees are either male or female, not both. You need one male to pollinate several females, a typical ratio of 1 to 8 or 10 in commercial gardens. In a container garden, there is a minimum of one male and one female plant. The Peters variety is one of the most widely used male pollinators and is compact enough to be grown in containers alongside the female Kerman variety. Kerman is the most commercially grown pistachio in the world and manages in a large pot if handled correctly. Container size is 20 to 25 gallons with exceptionally well-draining soil. Pistachios truly hate wet feet. In fact, they are more drought-tolerant than almost any other nut tree on the list. A mixture of sandy soil, perlite, and a little compost works great. The time until the first nuts is 5 to 7 years. They are a long game, but once they start producing, they produce for decades. Commercial pistachio trees are often productive for over 100 years, making initial patience an investment in lifelong production. Here's something exciting about pistachio harvesting that most people have never heard of. Naturally ripened pistachio shells crack on their own while still on the tree. This splitting occurs because the seed inside expands as it ripens and literally pushes the shell apart. This is called splitting and is a natural signal that the nut is ready. Commercially discarded pistachios, uncracked, are not necessarily unripe or bad. Sometimes the pistachio will not split because it is a dummy without a developed kernel. But sometimes it just has a very thick shell, and you can force it to crack and check. Don't automatically throw them away. Test them first. One wrong winter and the tree wakes up confused because insufficient cold causes delayed or uneven flowering in the pistachio. Number 3. Hazel. Hazel, also called hazelnut, may be the most beginner-friendly nut tree on this list. I say this with confidence because they are fast, tough, productive, and stay manageable in a container with almost embarrassingly minimal effort. USDA Zones 4 through 9 are a ridiculous cold hardiness range for a nut grower. Hazel can withstand temperatures as low as -20 degrees Fahrenheit with the right variety. American and European hazel hybrids such as Jefferson and Yamhill are developed specifically for resistance to eastern hazelnut blight. Oregon State Materials identified Jefferson and Yamhill as the top varieties associated with resistance to eastern hazelnut blight. This turns the section from a vague suggestion for beginners into a concrete starting point, backed by breeding history. The container size is 15 to 20 gallons to start with, although you will want to increase the size as the tree grows. Hazels are naturally multi-stemmed, bush-like, and in a container this growth habit actually keeps them compact and bushy. Standard hazel is wind-pollinated and requires a cross-pollinator, a second genetically different hazelnut nearby, to properly set nuts. Hazel releases pollen from long, dangling catkins in late winter, sometimes in January or February. Those catkins are one of the earliest sources of pollen available to winter-active bees and pollinators when little else in the garden is blooming. You're not only growing your own food, but actively supporting local pollinator populations during the most difficult time of the year. The time until the first nuts is 3 to 4 years from the name variety, sometimes even faster. When these nuts begin to emerge, clusters of papery hazelnuts literally hang from the stems. This is one of the most satisfying things about a container garden. Hazel should be the moment where the pace slows down a bit and the visuals become more seasonal and atmospheric. Late winter catkins create a beautiful image and provide the viewer with a moral reward in addition to a culinary one. Hazel leaves, especially dried ones, contain aromatic compounds that act as natural insect repellents. Grind dried hazel leaves and mix into the topsoil of adjacent container plants or use as a mulch layer. You will notice a significant reduction in fungus gnats and certain soil pest larvae. This is an old European folk practice with true functional chemistry, compounds similar to those found in some commercial insect repellents. Number 2 is macadamia. You already know that macadamia nuts are the most expensive nut in the world commercially. Prices can reach $30 per pound for quality macadamia nuts in retail stores. The reason is simple. They are extremely difficult to produce at scale. They have very specific climatic requirements, and the shell is one of the hardest natural materials in the plant kingdom. It takes 300 pounds of pressure per square inch to crack. It's wild. It's legitimately wild. USDA Zones 9 through 11, the macadamia is a tropical and subtropical tree native to Queensland, Australia, and does not tolerate frost well. Below 25 degrees Fahrenheit, you are looking at serious damage. This is where container growing becomes your best friend. If you are in Zone 8 or even warm Zone 7 with a protected microclimate, you can grow this tree in a container. Keep outside during warm seasons and bring indoors or greenhouse when temperatures drop. The container size is 20 to 25 gallons, and the tree in the container remains much more compact than its above-ground counterpart. In the wild, it can reach 30 or 40 feet. In a pot, a well-managed macadamia will often remain under 10 feet. Varieties like Beaumont and Keith are compact and productive, with Beaumont particularly known for its heavy fruiting and relatively early production schedule. The time to nuts from a grafted tree is 2 to 5 years, from a seed 7 to 10 years, always buy grafted ones. The soil should be rich, well-draining, and slightly acidic. Macadamia trees are sensitive to phosphorus toxicity, so go easy with a high-phosphorus fertilizer. A fertilizer formulated specifically for protea plants or one designed for Australian native plants is ideal. Pollination. Macadamias are technically self-fertile, but produce significantly better with cross-pollination. If you can put 2 different varieties in containers, your yields will be significantly higher. Queensland industry material also shows that excess phosphorus can reduce yields. Bonus, and this is critical, if you have pets, macadamia nuts are toxic to dogs. Even small amounts can cause vomiting, weakness, hypothermia, and neurological symptoms in dogs. This is not mild sensitivity, this is real toxicity. The ASPCA confirms macadamia toxicity in dogs, including weakness, vomiting, tremors, and unknown toxic principle. Keep containers up or in places your dog can't reach, especially during harvesting. The exact toxic compound has not yet been fully identified by science. Number 1. The tiny nut tree you should grow in a container that most gardeners have never heard of. Number 1 is the heart nut. If you've never heard of the heart nut, it's because it's been hiding in plain sight for decades, completely shaded by its more famous relatives, black walnut and English or Persian walnut. This is a tragedy because the heart nut is in many ways superior to both for the home gardener. Heart walnut is a Japanese variety of walnut. The name comes from the shape of the shell, which is literally heart-shaped. Not metaphorically, not conventionally described as heart-shaped, honestly, clearly, recognizably heart-shaped. When you see one, you will immediately understand why it is called that way. USDA Zones 5 through 9. Cold-hardy, heat-tolerant, and adaptable to a wide range of soil conditions. The container size is 20 to 25 gallons with a deep pot. Important because, like pecans, walnuts want to grow deep roots. This is what makes the heart walnut genuinely different from the standard walnut in a container context. The tree is much more compact, while the black walnut can grow up to 100 feet, and the Persian up to 60. Heart nuts in a controlled container environment can be maintained at a height of 8 to 15 feet with proper pruning. It responds well to this management. It is a genuinely container-adapted walnut tree in a way that standard walnuts simply are not. Self-fertile, yes, although cross-pollination increases yields, as with most walnut trees. The time to the first nuts is 4 to 6 years from the grafted tree. When you get your first harvest, this is what will absolutely amaze you. Heart-shaped nutshells are noticeably easy to crack. They crack cleanly, and the kernel, which has a milder, sweeter flavor than black walnut, comes out mostly intact. Anyone who has struggled with black walnuts knows what a breakthrough this is. Utah State describes the Japanese heart walnut as a medium-sized walnut, useful in smaller yards, which supports a smaller framing scale. Penn State confirms that walnuts produce juglone, and because black walnuts are most notorious for juglone problems. Here's the juglone factor that every walnut grower should know. Black walnuts produce significant amounts of juglone, a biochemical compound toxic to many other plants. Heart walnut produces juglone at a much lower level than black walnut. Not zero, but dramatically smaller, which means you can place a container of heart nuts closer to other plants without the same chemical warfare issues. This alone makes it a much more practical choice for a patio or balcony garden. Heart nut leaves, when dried and crushed, have historically been used as a natural parasiticide in livestock and poultry production. Tannins and juglone compounds in low concentrations have anti-parasitic properties documented in traditional agricultural practices. For the home container gardener, the practical application is this. Dried heart nut leaf mulch is incredibly effective against soil nematodes and fungus gnats. Mix a thin layer of crushed, dried leaves into the top inch of soil every few months. You've just been given 7 nut trees that most gardeners have no idea can be grown in containers. From the deep-rooting bivariate challenge of the pecan to the rot-resistant, lean powerhouse of the Chinese chestnut. From the self-fertile, early-blooming almond to the incredibly patient and blazingly rewarding pistachio to the cold, hardy, pollinator-supporting hazel, to the tropical luxury of the macadamia. And finally, the most underrated walnut tree in the world of container gardening. Each of these trees can produce real, harvestable nuts on your balcony, patio, backyard, or rooftop. You don't need a garden, you just need the right information, the right container, and the patience to let the trees do what they were designed to do. Grocery shopping gets more expensive every year. Your container pecan garden only gets more productive with each passing season, turning an initial investment into decades of home production. This is math that works in your favor, not against you. Sort the trees into categories that the viewer can remember: challenge tree, main food tree, beginner tree, luxury tree, and hidden genius tree. This categorization helps with recall and increases comments as viewers discuss their favorites. If you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, listen up. We're constantly putting out content about growing container food that most gardening channels don't touch on. Compact high-calorie crops, forgotten container bases, and patio trees replacing store aisles. If you leave without subscribing, you'll skip the next video and the one after that, and you'll be buying $8 bags of almonds, while your neighbor who signed up harvests from his patio. Don't be that neighbor who missed the container gardening revolution while it was happening right before their eyes. Subscribe and see you in the next video about 7 fruit trees that are superior to grocery container berries.